Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law she made her bed so lay in it? My husband and I are in our early 30s, married for a few years but together for 11. Throughout this time we often argued due to my in-law's behavior, but specifically mother-in-law. There are many examples I could make, but to sum it up, she has been controlling not only to my husband but also me, even going as far as pressuring my husband to make me do what she wanted regarding situations that didn't concern her at all, disrespectful towards me, overall invasive and demanding. You name it. The only thing she has not done is directly insult me to my face. I kept telling my husband I was over their behavior and to put a stop to it, but he never really acted decisively, so mother-in-law never really stopped. Time after time I would put up a happy front and bite my tongue not to cause drama, but because everything just keeps piling up, I'm always on the verge of blowing up whenever I'm around them. I told my husband I'd like to limit contact at least for a while, but he insists we go visit. My husband is also aware of much I'm affected by this. Anyway, we meet up and mother-in-law starts with her usual antics. I stay quiet until I've had enough and start talking back to her. I did not insult her, but I wouldn't let anything slide like I usually do and highlighted every inappropriate or invasive comment. She is surprised and asks me what came on to me, I never acted like this, and so on. In a fit of rage, I wasn't yelling and I spoke calmly and slowly, but my emotional state was crystal clear. You couldn't mistake it for a light-hearted remark. I told her she's been disrespecting me for years and this is what she's getting now, and she made her bed so she should just lay in it. Things got tense and we left. I'm upset but finally feel liberated for standing up for myself. Husband seems torn, mother-in-law is obviously livid. Husband has now said that he agrees and understands my emotional state on the matter but also wants to keep the peace and to just apologize. I refused and said I would only be open to revisit the relationship if I see some change and effort to at least be cordial and mutually respectful, and I absolutely will not apologize for anything I said because I mean it and would do it again. I reminded him that he had many chances to stand up to them and that I also said no one involved would enjoy it if I had to stand up for myself, and he never took me seriously. I also said I never insulted her or yelled at her, so apologizing for my reaction to her comments sounds incredibly backwards. Am I the a-hole for what I said and for not budging on this? Top comments. Not the a-hole for this moment, but you've been treating yourself poorly for years by staying with a man who is willing to sit by silently while you are being treated disrespectfully, and asks you to take the poor treatment to keep the peace. Why did you marry him before this got resolved? At least at this point you don't have kids. If he does want kids, then find a good counselor and insist on establishing boundaries with the in-laws before you bring a baby into this toxic family. Not the a-hole, you're a saint. Your husband needs to step up and be better. If he can't stand up for you with you present, I highly doubt that he does behind your back. Makes me wonder what mother-in-law says when you are not there, and why she's comfortable enough to say it to him. Opie replies. That has been an ongoing issue that I brought up to him many times. I kind of know what he says to her when he stands up for me behind my back and is often to the tune of, don't do this going forward. She justifies her behavior and the following time she is more sly about it. No matter how many conversations I have with my husband, things are never really resolved, so that's where we landed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for cutting the amount I contribute to our budget after my wife refused to stick to our agreement regarding our kids? My wife and I agreed before we got married on a lot of the big things. Where we would live. How we would deal with our families. How we would raise our kids. Stuff like that. Deal breakers. One of our decisions was that as long as our kids were full-time students, then they would not have to contribute monetarily to the household budget. Obviously they would still have chores and such. If they weren't full-time students, then they would get a 6-month grace period after which they had to pay rent and buy their own food. Rent would be equal to 1/4 of full-time minimum wage work. We agreed on this in 1998. Our eldest did not want to go to university and used the 6 months after graduation to work, save money, and plan a trip around the world. When he got back, he started an apprenticeship and is now a welder. Our middle kid went to university and is now a nurse. Our youngest did 1 semester of college and decided it wasn't for him. He also decided that he didn't want to work. After 6 months I told him that he was now responsible for his rent and food budget. He went crying to his mom saying that he couldn't afford that. She said he didn't have to pay. She didn't discuss it with me first. It was a unilateral decision on her part. She pays all our bills. I give her a set amount every month to pay for everything. The money she earns she either spends however she wants or it goes into our vacation fund. So I decided to cut my contribution to our budget by the cost of rent and 1/3 of our grocery bill. She asked me why I did that and I said that we had an agree that she chose to ignore, so I did the same. She has been paying the difference out of the money that would normally go into our vacation account and she cut back on her personal spending. But she is pissed that I am doing this. She says I'm an a-hole for being financially manipulative. I think she needs to either accept it or get her poor baby to grow up. She tried getting our older kids on her side but they agree with me. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole, the other two got tough love, why baby gets away with it. Favoritism sucks. OP replies. There was no tough love. The two older ones knew the deal and both did great on their own. The welder lived at home for his entire apprenticeship and only paid 1/4 of minimum wage, not of what he was earning. He saved up for those years and bought a house. My daughter still lives at home and pays 1/4 of minimum wage, not what a registered nurse earns. Info: did you tell your son at the beginning of the 6 months he would be responsible for rent and food? Is there anything going on with him to cause him not to work? Is he depressed or mentally ill? OP replies. All our kids knew the deal since they started middle school. He is not mentally ill. Info: what does your wife plan to do about your youngest son? Does she wants to cuddle him until she dies? Both of you reacted over the top here. You should have a long talk about this to your wife. And what she is planning to do, because the child can't just stay at home doing nothing. This isn't helpful in any way. Try to talk it out. Talk to your son as well, what his plans are. Also, are there any mental health issues why your son can't work at the moment? OP replies. No clue what her plan is for the kid. To the best of my knowledge he has no mental health issues that preclude him from working. Not the a-hole, so your daughter still lives at home and contributes but your wife thinks it's fair to let your youngest off the hook. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents that I will only support them if they move back to their home country? My parents moved to North America from a developing country when I was 4. My siblings were 2 and 6 months. My dad worked hard to make a life for us and my mom worked hard making sure we didn't waste the opportunities they were providing for us. They also sent money home to help my grandparents. Sometimes to the detriment of our family here. My sisters and I are all married with families now. My parents are getting ready to retire and they want us to supply them the way they supported our grandparents. The problem is that we cannot afford to pay for everything here. Even with my parents' savings and my dad's pension, they cannot maintain the lifestyle they have while my dad works. However, with their money and ours combined, they can live like gods back home. We could sell their house, use that money to buy them a villa in a gated community. They could fly back to see us all the time. They could literally live in the top 1% there instead of scraping by here. The only problem is the grandkids. They want to see them all the time. They think that my sisters and I are exiling them. We are offering them a chance to have great lives in a country with no snow. Where food costs are 1/4 to 1/6 those here. Where the healthcare is actually rated higher than here. We are looking at the next 20 years. When everything is said and done, I offered them the exact same amount they sent their folks. It will buy their groceries every month and that's it. They think I'm being stingy and mean. Top comments. If they worked all their life, they should have put aside enough to live once retired. This whole ordeal of needing to pay for your parents' retirement is crap. Not the a-hole. OP replies. They sent a lot of money back home. Not the a-hole. They should have invested all that money they sent back home to make sure they were secure in their future, and you should do the same with any money you'd give them. This whole cycle is why they need someone to fund their retirement in the first place. Definitely not the a-hole. I try not to judge other cultures from a place of ignorance, but the idea of future generations supporting previous generations is basically a Ponzi scheme. It's such a bad way to build a society. Your parents are being stubborn, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They didn't support your grandparents living in the States, they supported them living in your home country. You're being generous by offering to do the same. I will never be able to afford the retirement I want either. Because my ideal retirement would mean a beautiful house in the Caribbean, a yacht to get drunk on, and a membership at the nicest golf course nearby. Probably ain't gonna happen, but I'm sure as hell not going to make that anyone else's problem. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not giving up my bed? I live with my girlfriend. We live in a 3-bedroom apartment, but only our bedroom has a bed in it. Often of the rooms is used as an office for me and the other is more of a storage room. My girlfriend went out with a friend at the weekend. When they were out, her friend got a message from someone with proof that her boyfriend was cheating on her. They lived together, so she didn't want to go home. My girlfriend told her she could stay with us for the night but didn't tell me until they'd arrived back. My girlfriend asked if I'd have the sofa for the night so her friend can have the bed. I refused since I'm not going to be kicked out of my own bed. I told her that her friend can have the sofa but also that it's only for the night and she can't stay any longer than that. My girlfriend said I was being unfair and her friend should have the bed, but I just said she can have the sofa or stay somewhere else. Am I the a-hole for not giving up my bed? Top comments. Not the a-hole. There is no way in hell I would give up my bed. That's your personal space. To me, that's like asking to borrow someone's underwear. You just don't do that. Your girlfriend should have given you a heads up on her friend staying, and she should have discussed before agreeing. I wouldn't want someone just crashing on my couch all the time either, so while I would put a limit on the stay, I think she should be allowed to stay more than one night. But that's just my opinion. This is one of those situations where you aren't technically wrong, but you need to understand that there are consequences for your behavior. Are you wrong for not wanting to give up your bed? No, but the kind thing to do would be to let the woman have the bed for the night, where I'm sure she and your girlfriend would end up talking about the situation more and figuring out what to do. Are you wrong for not wanting the friend to stay longer than a night? Also no, and your girlfriend should have warned you she was bringing someone over in a softly emergency situation in the first place. But your girlfriend has as much say in what happens in your home as you do. You don't get to make unilateral decisions any more than she does. Your girlfriend is showing kindness to her friend in a trying time. She expected you would do the same. Instead, you've done the opposite. Be prepared for how this changes her view on you. Mild: you are the a-hole. Partial a-hole. You're not the a-hole for wanting to sleep in your own bed. Your girlfriend's friend should be glad you are letting her stay. You are the a-hole for saying she can only stay one night. Obviously she is very important to your girlfriend and it is very difficult and scary having no place to stay. If she has no other place to go, you should at least put a roof over her head. But I agree, she doesn't need your bed. OP replies. Why should I not be able to state it's only for one night? Should I just not get a say in who is staying in my apartment? She has family and other friends and she's capable of staying in a hotel if needed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for leaving my elderly parents to struggle? My wife and I moved in to help my parents financially because they struggled with bills on their retirement income. My wife hated it. It was a downgrade from our lifestyle and a significant downgrade from what she was used to. We rented out our home, so we had income from that. My mom continued to be difficult, complaining about how my wife eats too extravagantly. Even though my wife was buying the groceries. We started to go out of town for weekends, because we needed a break. For some reason my mom started taking up the only showed when she knew my wife had to leave for work on multiple occasions, causing my wife to be late for work. My dad doesn't do much because he has his own old-fashioned views on cooking and clean, and they both chose to hate on my wife for her working in a career. Finally, my wife got sick of fighting with them over a shower and rented a small studio near her work. I started staying there more often and I enjoy the peace away from parents. I told my parents I'm done supporting them and the house after a crazy high electricity bill when my mom will forget to close windows during the day but blast the AC. I decided it's time for me to join my wife in the studio. My parents don't know how they can afford bills, food, and things like insurance and taxes. I told them maybe they need to downsize or sell the home. They said they would if we let them have the home we are renting, and I explained that on top of rent for the studio, that home still has a mortgage. Mom came after my wife saying she needs to downgrade her lifestyle, but I told my parents I think you guys should try that because I will no longer be giving them any money and they have to manage themselves. My dad asked what was he supposed to do, and I told him seasonal holiday hiring is coming up and they need get part-time jobs if they can't make ends meet. My parents act like I'm evil for suggesting this, but it's really their only option to keep the lights on and food on the table. Top comments. Not the a-hole for wanting to cut support to your parents, but kinda an a-hole to your wife. I get that there's a feeling that they're your parents, you want to do what you can to support them, but they're, specifically your mother, seems to be taking things for granted and lashing out on your wife for having a life. I think you should be putting your wife first over your parents right now, because it sounds like your wife had to sacrifice more than you have. You tried to help your parents by making a huge adjustment in your life when you moved in with them. They made that impossible by taking you for granted and being incredibly disrespectful to your wife. They should have been thankful and accommodating, and they clearly went out of their way not to be. They have made their bed, it is time to lay in it. Not the a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for making keepsake books for my daughters that don't include my husband? So, I, 31F, have been making books for my daughters, 6 and 2, since my first was born. Every year on their birthdays I write them a letter talking about them and how much I love them, and I have been pasting them in a book next to a picture of me and them for each year. I plan on gifting these books to them when they turn 16. My thinking was that we don't tell the people we love how much we love them, and I never want my daughters to question my love. You also never know how life is going to pan out, and this way they will always have a personal memento of my own words in case anything were to happen to me. Now, my husband, 33, has always known about this. I was never keeping it from him. I would write the notes on my phone, and then when I got the time would write them out to put in the book. He would even go through my phone and take snippets of what I wrote from my notes and post into his Instagram. The problem arose when my oldest daughter had just turned 4 and he came across me actually putting a letter in the book. He looked at the book and the pictures of me and her and said, "What about me?" He was angry that I hadn't included him and insisted that I either go back and change all the letters to say, "we" instead of "I," and print new pictures that have him in them, or stop making the book. I haven't stopped making these books because I think they will be important for my girls to have. I've just put them at the back of a cupboard hoping he won't find them. I feel like they are about my relationship with my daughters, and I'm a little sad that my husband doesn't see the value in that. But I feel uncomfortable that they are now a secret from him. I guess I need some outsider opinions. Am I the a-hole, or is my husband being unreasonable here? Edit, to be clear, because it seems some people have misinterpreted, these books are not full of photos documenting my children's lives. Just one page per year with a letter from me and one photo of me with said child. Top comments. I am in the not the a-hole camp, too. I don't think that two parents have to always be lumped into everything together. It's okay for children to bond with one individual parent without the other one sometimes. The same way it's important for parents to have one-on-one time with each child in multi-children households. I see no issue with a gift being from just you or just your husband. I also take issue with any parent of any gender who just expects that the other parent will do everything for them. You have been investing in this 16-year project since they were born. Something that will be beautiful and sentimental and requires time and commitment. It's not like you did it in secret either. At any rate, to me the fact that your husband wants to get in on it despite never having even seen it, never offered to help even choose a photo or thought to write a letter would send me into a rage. That's some real, sign my name on the card, of a gift they have no idea what is even in the box, energy, and it's not okay. There is nothing stopping your husband from creating his own sentimental gift. I didn't read this as you trying to intentionally exclude him, as much as you just wanted a book of photos and letters of you and your children, and honestly I see nothing wrong with that. It's an amazing gift. I would tell him you would love to include a letter written by him and a picture of him and the daughter each year. Do not take on the emotional work of his relationship with your daughters. Women have been sucked into the maintaining relationships role and it never works. You cannot maintain a relationship for two other people, it is between them. Not the a-hole. Tell your husband the next time he asks, What about me? Tell him that he can do his own just as easily as you, as they are a diary of your feelings towards them. And he can do his own, and that would just as great as well. I think it is great what you are doing for your children. Keep up the good work, your children will cherish them no doubt later in life. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.